hosts of the Dr. Vibe Show, but I'm not wearing that hat tonight. Tonight I'm wearing M&M Explorers, which is produced by the Men and Masculinity Summit team, consisted of program lead Lee Rosen and also have Terry, Michelle, and Steve. And we do monthly conversations in regards to men and masculinity. And our regular, let's say our regular, I don't know if that sounds good. Our regular guest, our regular friend is Robert Leung. He's back for another conversation topic this evening. I'd like to thank everyone who's watching this live or via replay. It's appreciated, not taken for granted. Robert, how have you been?
I've been great, Dr. Vibe. It's great to be back here again with you and all the people all the men on the call.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to another spirited discussion.
Yeah, it's going to be another I like to say I only like to host epic conversations. Right. So we always have epic conversations, whether they're in this format or via phone. So I'm looking forward to it. And men and others who are watching, certainly feel free to chime in. If you're on the Zoom call, you can take yourself off mute and chime in. If you're watching this on Facebook, Lee Rosen is watching the Facebook channel and he'll share the comments via the Zoom platform. So Robert, we have a conversation tonight about commitments. Men, what are your commitments? Why did you want to chat about this subject tonight?
Well, I think it's impossible to move your life forward or move with any confidence and strength without knowing what you're committed to. And I think, the idea of a commitment seems a somewhat archaic form in present society and among men. And, my introduction to commitments happened through a men's weekend that I did. And for some of the men on the call, the same is true. And it changed my life to know what a commitment was, what it meant to hold a commitment, and to experience some of the consequences for not holding commitments. I think we all experience them. We don't realize that some of the consequences we're experiencing in our life are the result of not keeping and maintaining our commitments.
So then let me ask, as we're sharing here on the first day of October, 2020,
right.
What does commitment mean to Robert Leung?
Well, I could give you a number of definitions, but essentially commitment in its simplest form means keeping your word. A commitment is a promise, a pledge, a dedication to keeping your word. It's that simple. There are a lot of definitions for it. The state of or quality of being dedicated to a cause or activity, an obligation that restricts freedom of action, a pledge, a solemn promise or undertaking that guides your actions. But they all come down to the same thing for a man, I believe, in its simplest form, is the ability to keep your word unequivocally.
Mm-hmm. Then, and you said a few moments ago, this word commitment in some people's minds is archaic for some men. Why do you say that?
I think that's true. That's been my experience. And I don't know if some of the men here will verify their own experience with men. But in my experience with men and my own personal experience before doing the men's weekend was that it was negotiable. It really wasn't cast in stone. It really, in many ways, my word didn't really mean that much to me, nor did it mean that much to anybody else. And on some very real level, my life reflected those consequences of not being serious and not being able to move forward and not being empowered, lack of confidence, all of those things. So I think, your word is the foundation upon which we stand. I think that's still true. And it's unfortunate that I think men today, and even in my time as well, young men in particular, don't have a true hold on what that means in their lives and what they're missing by not being able to commit to keeping their word.
So I asked this question, and there's younger men and the older men. When you see, what are the causes you feel in younger men for not realizing and recognizing and acting upon commitment? Is it anything different than the older man?
Well, I think a big part of it is not having been exposed to the idea of commitment by older men, by being fathered into some of these these ideas, this idea of commitment. You know, my father did give me some of that, but I got a large part of it from my men's team that I've been part of for, going on almost 30 years now. And from being in the company of other men who are willing to hold their own commitments and hold me to a commitment and a standard. And that was what really helped me to develop commitments that I held on my own, by having other men not only remind me of what my commitments are, but have consequences for me when I didn't live up to my commitments. So I think that's really an important part of it. I think that's men fathering each other, and it's a critical part of not doing this alone. Not doing this alone.
I get a sense that the word accountability has some foundation in what you're sharing with us. Do you want to expand on that? Because I see you nodding your head.
Well, yeah, I think that I don't think I would have kept my own commitments to myself if there wasn't some kind of accountability. And so I needed, and I think many of us do, need to have some realization of what those consequences are. And I think it's easy for us to sort of overlook what the consequences are in our lives of not being as successful in our work, in our relationships with our family, and accepting less in our lives by not living up to those commitments. That kind of sliding around, it doesn't serve anybody. But I think sometimes it's hard to get out of that if you haven't been exposed to it. And it's hard to do it alone.
I just want to encourage the men that are watching, if they want to unmute themselves or put comments in the chat room, because I'm watching body language and everyone's like focused on Robert's every syllable and every body language. But certainly we want to make sure that you get involved. This is our conversation, not just myself and Robert. I had told Robert before we went live, I did some research. I did, and I tried to do some research online about men and commitments. And whenever I looked online, all the commitments were men and commitments to another person, wife, spouse, partner, but there was nothing about a man's commitment to himself. And
yeah,
go ahead.
I think that's a good point. My experience of working with men over the years is that, and I've felt this for myself as well, is that there's almost like we're brought up into the belief that there's an obligation on our part to take care of, provide, protect, show up strong for. And so a lot of times when I talk to men, or when men talk to me when I was younger about something, and I felt like they were trying to put an obligation on me, or more commitments to me, I was resistful of that. In the end, what the men brought to me was to look at the results, the evidence in my life. And that's a tough thing, I think, for men to do on their own. But the ultimate accountability is, to those you say you care for and love, and how you show up for them. I think the ultimate, we talk a lot in men's circles about, have your men hold you accountable. I think that's horse manure. I think, if you really want to be held accountable, tell the people that it's going to affect what you're going to do. Tell them how you're going to show up. Tell them, what you're building. And then when you look at them in the eye, when you come around, self-accountable. That's my experience.
That's good stuff. Thanks for sharing. I just want to continue on with you just for a second, James, and also if Robert wants to chime in. Should a commitment be, there's some people think commitment's an obligation. They almost make it think it's a bad thing. Do you know where I'm coming from there? Some people can't handle commitment because they think it's an obligation. Does that make some sense there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot in the world that we interpret as obligations, and I know, just coming out of doing some of the men's work and being told that I was to pass that along to other men, when it felt like people were making that an obligation of mine, that I owed a debt, that was not enrolling in me being committed to that outcome. I think there is a degree of freedom when you know that, there's a lot of freedom when it's who you are and who you want to be. But when somebody else tells you who you need to be, that's like, to me, like shoving somebody's face in the mud. And why would I want to, even if you're right, I don't want to look at it, because I don't want my face shoved in the mud.
Right. That's good stuff. Robert, you want to add on?
No, I would just reinforce what Jim said. I think that the idea of being committed means you have no choice, and you have no choice to remain in doubt or to have other opinions or options or debate or negotiation around what you're committed to. And that's where the freedom comes in. You're free of all of that chatter in your head if you're able to let go of that and see that that's what a commitment is. It really is a form of freedom by the choices that you've made to do something. I think you're right that obligation had a pretty negative connotation to me in a lot of respects, also in terms of everything, in terms of relationships, in terms of job. But if we look at, instead of obligation, look at it in terms of responsibilities that we've chosen to have, and that you're filtering out all these other choices that kind of get in the way, that pass in front of us all the time, that keep us less focused, that keep us from what we say we're committed to. And that's the value of making a commitment, that it filters out all of those things and makes you pure and clear about what your choices are and moves you in a direction towards that success. But you have to be willing to make certain sacrifices. And that's a word that came up earlier in my discussion with Jim. And I think that's an important word too. What are you willing to sacrifice to fulfill your commitments? Mm. And I think that's where that whole idea of obligation and choices and everything else comes up. And commitments are what simplifies that process. It means letting go of some of that chatter to move towards your goal, the thing that you've committed to. Nice. And I think that's a muscle that is relatively undeveloped in most of us, and it requires training in order to develop it.
Okay, good stuff.
Can I jump in?
Yes, absolutely. I was going to ask if you wanted to jump in. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and I was trying to find the derivation of the word and a few things, and I think the word commitment, the idea of commitment has been around probably since the dawn of the idea of a promise or someone's ability to give their word. And I think the word commitment, I think has come up because of how many times a promise or a word was broken to add gravity to the word promise or giving your word. Because there was a time, it depends on the culture and it depends on the time, but there was a time where, and we've all heard it, the Old West and all these other things back in time where, your word is your bond. Yeah. So, if your word was your bond, there would certainly be no reason to go on to the word commitment, because your word was a commitment, right? But the one thing I was thinking about with this is the difference. You had said something, Dr. Vibe, earlier about the difference between younger men and older men. I think until you start giving commitments and learn where you commit to things you cannot fulfill necessarily, that you start to learn the power of, okay, through commitments, through mistakes about committing, you start to learn the power of being very cautious to what you commit to. I think that's the difference between older men and younger men, is older men start to learn to be more cautious about a commitment because of the consequences of being unable, of committing to something that to not committing to something they can't fulfill or won't fulfill.
Nice. That's good stuff. Robert?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what Howard's saying. I think that you're part of the reticence for men in terms of commitment, particularly in relationships, I think, is knowing what the consequences of some relationships like marriage can be. And, you know, we've heard enough stories about the sort of negative results of some of those, how some of those commitments work out. But I think that, you know, I think Howard's right that, you know, it's a growth process to learn how to hold a commitment. And I think you have to be taught how to do that. You have to be trained how to do that. I'm not sure that, you know, society is well structured in that process. The idea of, you know, giving your word and having that mean something that's an unalterable promise. You gave your word is like a contract. Howard was saying that. Back in the day, you shook hands on something and that was the contract. And you know, if you didn't abide by that, you really weren't a man.
Or you'd be killed.
That too, right?
No, but all right, like Samurai Japan, you know, the commitment of following their way was to be honorable. And if they dishonored, you know, the consequence was harikari, right? That was that was the consequence. It was a known consequence for breaking that commitment.
Right.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the times when there were very clear prescribed ways of operating within those cultures and societies. You know, commitments, I don't know that, you know, we say, you know, your word is your bond, and, you know, that's the way it was a long time ago. And I believe so to a certain extent, but it was also evidenced by your action, right? You know, by something you did. There was a ritual, whether it was a handshake or whether it was a wedding ceremony or whether it was, you know, the pledge you took, or whether it was the oath, or whether it was the man who, you know, brought you into that group, that you know, that union, that you know, whatever it was, you know, as an apprentice or as a beginner, you know, there was a process, there was a ritual, things were evidenced through action. And today we've gone to the extreme with words where, you know, we used to say, you know, sticks and stones can break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Well, today names are worse than sticks and stones. You know, where is the commit? You know, so I don't consider it a commitment unless there's action there. I think that's why, you know, contracts require there to be, you know, compensation, right? There's got to be something that makes it a contract. There's got to be a give and a take. There's got to be a yin and a yang. Yeah, I think that's an important part of commitment is, what is the action? You know, it's not just that I said something, it's that I actually did something to evidence that that's a commitment.
Yeah, you had mentioned sacrifice earlier too, and I think, you know, giving up something,
yeah,
to make something happen. Yeah, taking some form of action. I think you're right. Otherwise, it's just words.
And the bigger the thing you take on, the more you have to be willing to sacrifice.
Yeah, it's demonstrating your commitment.
Yeah, could I jump in here? I would say that, you know, commitment lacks honor as well these days. That men now have, you know, conditions or agreements, and they don't really hold it as a commitment. So you just fire off crap out of your mouth about something, and then something else comes in where it makes a plan B, and all of a sudden you go back on it, or you know, I myself have found out through the years that I get now I am somebody that really looks at what I'm committing to, because I don't want there to be a plan B, and I want to hold on to that, and whatever's going to come in front of me it's not going to deter me. or, I stay on that path because I'm committed to it, where before, I started doing men's work and kind of pulling my life together. I just, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. And, it's just as powerful to, because to find out, I think Leung said earlier that, you don't want to just commit to something because it seems like the convenient thing to do.
So,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Frank, I just want to go with Frank a little bit more. You said things have changed in regards to commitment in men. What do you think are some of the factors, in your opinion, that have made commitment not as strong a thing for men today, maybe in years past? What are some of the things, in your opinion, that have caused the change, the turn?
I mean, I think some of the social norm, the things that have happened with society, as far as social media, and it being a place where we're more worried about how it looks and people's likes, and the fakeness of things, where you're feeding your ego, where now before it wasn't so much of that, and everything's convenient, things are easy. I was reading a book earlier. It's Dan Crenshaw, Fortitude, and he was saying in there that he wonders if things go sideways with all the things we're dealing with society now, if we have the men that fought for like World War II, and in that very gruesome battles, if we had that in our own front, would we have the same level of man that could are conditioned like that? Obviously there's some special forces and there's some really strong men in the military, and really strong men out there, but it's definitely fallen off to where our grandfathers were.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. Appreciated. Robert, you want to come back in, add in anything to what you've heard over the last few minutes?
No, I'm just listening. I'm in perfect agreement with what the conversation's been. I appreciate LaPointe's point of view.
Very much so. Some really good stuff. And again, if other people want to chime in, you can do it in the chat room on Zoom, or come on live like Frank, James, and Howard have. And also, as I said, Lee's watching the Facebook page. So commitments. For you, Robert, when you got clarity on commitments, how did your life become better as a man?
Well, there was a sense of confidence that it brought with it. It helped me develop leadership skills that I wanted to think that I had, but actually put them into action, and both at work and on a social level as well. And those were critical pieces for me to actually be able to step into leadership positions at work and outside of it, within the men's organization that I was involved in. And that in itself opened up new relationships. It just opened up a whole new world of possibility for me. Just having that kind of self-confidence and a belief in oneself that I think that I didn't have before. And it was a growth, a maturing process as well, to be responsible to others. At one point, our division was, I don't know, it was well over 100 men. And I don't remember how many, 12 different teams. So, wow. And I would go and meet with each of these teams. And first, it's a pretty intimidating experience to do that. But with the support of the men on my team and all of the men, I was able to step into a whole other realm that I didn't know could exist for me. And that translated into the workplace as well, and into personal relationships as well, that kind of confidence. So in some ways, it was astounding to have that kind of support and responsibility and obligation and commitment, all part of that, but way beyond what I imagined I could have sustained or, held in my life before. So it was a powerful growth experience to have that opportunity to do that and have the faith and trust of other men too.
Yes, very important. And I'm going to put that question too to anyone that's watching live or in regards to if you want to chime in, say like, how has increased commitment in your life helped your life as a man, helped your life? What are you committed to? Is there one or two things you're comfortable in sharing, saying what are you committed to? And how is your commitment level now compared to a few years ago? And I've heard, excuse me, a number of gentlemen here saying, or when I went on the men's weekend, that was the turn in regards to commitment. One of the many things that turned your life for the better when you did that. So if you want to open up, that's what we're here for. As you've heard, we've had people chime in before. Robert, I want to focus because you've mentored hundreds of men.
Yeah.
Hundreds of men.
I've had that privilege, yes.
Yes, it is. It is a privilege. Over the last few years, where do you feel commitment is for most men? Is it on a plateau? Is it dipping? Is it going up? And I know for every individual it can be different, but what's your sense of the commitment environment when it comes to manhood?
Well, I'd say, in general, I think it's better than it was, but I think it's taking a dip along with everything else that seems to be taking a dip right now. I think we're all challenged by the circumstances that exist, outside of our own homes. We're in the midst of a pandemic. There's definitely political upheaval, and there's a lot of variables and unknowns, and that, I think that exacerbates what we're talking about. If you don't have a sense of self, if you don't have a sense of what you're committed to, if you don't have a solid foundation of support in your life, you're really just spinning now. So I think, this is certainly a time when knowing who you are, knowing what you have, what you value, and knowing what you're committed to and can depend on is critical. It's critical. It's critical to you. It's critical to the people in your life that matter, the people you're responsible to and for. It's a dynamic that has never been more important and more evident now, the lack of it, when there is it lacking in terms of leadership and direction in the country. So I think this is a time to man up to your commitments, know what they are. How many men have a list of their commitments, know exactly what they're committed to, and know what they're willing to sacrifice to maintain those commitments. I think that's the only foundation you can hold on to right now. And the truth is that's the only foundation you can hold on to all the time. That's the bedrock that we stand on. And if it's gravel or it's shaky, then you're shaky.
That's a good point. Very, very good point. Yeah, that is, and it's concerning. I know you also mentor, probably more than ever, probably younger men. Is commitment a challenge for them? And do they tell you it is, or do you have to ask them?
Usually I have to point it out to them. I don't think that they're always aware that they lack commitment. And I think it's still true. I think for the younger men, I think commitment's an alien concept on some level. It's just another word. I think they know what it means. I don't think they know the truth of it, what it means to uphold a commitment. I think that's something that had to be taught and learned through experience. So I don't necessarily blame them for that. There's not a lot of conversation. I mean, when was the last time anybody heard commitment in a conversation outside of this? Yeah, exactly. You don't hear it on the news. You don't hear it on TV shows. You don't hear it anywhere. So it's not surprising that, half the population doesn't have a real concept of what it means to have a commitment or hold a commitment. And that's where we exist. And this is not just true for younger men. I think older men may have heard the word, but I don't know that they're any more, any more well acquainted with the idea of being committed and truly committed to something where you are willing to sacrifice and there are no other alternatives. And this is where you are. I think, short of being, I always point out the military and places like that where you're in a situation where you're taking orders and you're doing what you're told and you're held to an accountability standard that makes you do that, but if you don't have that, where do you get it?
Hey, Robert, I just jump in here for a second.
Yeah.
And to answer your last question or 2 questions ago, Dr. Vibe. Until I stepped into a men's circle, it wasn't a commitment. Everything was negotiable. So if I said I was going to be there at a certain time or do something by a certain day, I could make up any excuse I wanted to make up in order to get out of that. And you were never challenged on it. So, it was traffic. Oh, it was this. Oh, it was a busy night. I couldn't get whatever. And I had, we all had tons of excuses, or at least I did, until somebody said, why were you late? And kept asking that until you realized, you're fully responsible for what you signed up to do. So I think you're right. I think it's a practice thing, Robert. And it's practice with the people you're connected with that's going to make sure you don't, you don't bullshit yourself around the commitment. What you said, what came out of your mouth is something you're accountable and responsible for.
Absolutely. And I think, how many people in your life care enough to do that? Because it's an uncomfortable process to do that, to confront someone. I mean, it doesn't always have to be as confrontational as some of the things we've experienced in practice. And I totally uphold that and support it. But it's not an easy thing to do. And it doesn't even happen within families, that kind of accountability. So, when we say that, is there an issue with this in our society in this day and age? Yeah, absolutely. And more than ever, I think. More than ever. How many of us are willing to step in front of somebody else because we care about them and deliver clearly and unequivocally what we think their responsibilities are and hold them to what they committed to, what they promised? Doesn't happen very much. I mean, we're watching movies about, Westerns where people, kept their word and were willing to risk their lives. And we idealize those things because they think, wow, that's incredible that somebody actually was willing to put their life on the line for what they believed in. We're not even willing to, for the most part, have a difficult discussion with someone who we supposedly care about, to hold them to their commitments.
So before
Robert.
I know some people want to jump
Go ahead,
in.
Howard.
Let me just go on first. Robert, did you want to come in? Robert P. And
Yeah,
then we'll have, so let Robert P come in first. Then we'll have Joe, then Howard. So Robert P first.
I'll be pretty brief here. And I love this conversation. And Robert, thanks. And Doctor, thanks for leading it. The main takeaway I've gotten so far is the importance of men's work and that accountability system. But when I think about the modern man, sometimes I feel very lonely, right? I think of a lot of men that didn't grow up with fathers. I think about a lot of men that are isolated, right? That don't have this accountability system. And what I'm really curious about, and I'd love to hear the group's take on this, is what are the repercussions of letting yourself down, right? As Lee put it, there was non-negotiable. I can make up an excuse and I could go and watch Netflix, right? And the people on the other side of it, maybe there's no repercussions. They go on with their party or whatever it is you flaked out on. But what's the repercussions to us when we continuously flake out on ourselves? What happens to us internally? Because I know when I do it, I let myself down. And when I do it over and over again, it leads to some form of depression in a way, right? So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that, but I think it's a curious place because a lot of guys are struggling alone.
Yeah.
Beautiful. This is beautiful. Go on.
So what I was going to say is right in alignment with that, Robert. Is it Pister? Heister. So like where I was coming from is what I believe the crux of it is the biggest consequence. You know, we talk about in the men's circle, we help provide the consequence for each other if we're not holding a commitment or a standard or a promise, an agreement. And I think for myself, and I think for society, what I believe is that we've moved towards comfort so much that comfort has become our drug of choice. Like comfort has become more important than self-love or self-esteem or self-worth. And I think we can see that so many ways in society. And I think that's what makes commitments weaker and weaker amongst people, amongst organizations. You know, it's like, yeah, I'm committed till the comfort level, till it's really uncomfortable. And then when it's uncomfortable enough, then my commitment to comfort is going to kick in over my commitment. And the consequence to that is, number one, you cannot achieve any greater level than you're at unless you have a greater level of commitment. It just doesn't happen. We look at all the people we respect, you know, super achievers in any area, whether it's business, athletics, performance, service, whatever it is, you know, what makes them perform is a commitment. You know, what makes them grow is a commitment. And we find every time we commit to something and we're ready to back off from discomfort, but we hold the commitment, we find out we can do more than we thought we could. And even if we knew we could do it, either way, when we complete the commitment, we always, we increase our self-trust, which increases our self-worth and allows us to know more power, utilize more power that we have. We become weaker when we don't hold commitments. We become weaker when we break our word. Like I believe every spiritual practice has commitment built into it. Like the 4 agreements. If any of you ever read the 4 agreements, the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. You know, and they talk about, and the whole point of those 4 agreements is creating your form of heaven on earth versus the dream of the planet, which they call hell on earth. And you know, the word agreement alone is a commitment, but the first agreement is to be impeccable with your word. You know, to be able to keep your word. And I find the biggest challenge for me in life is, you know, my default of comfort versus making a win more important than being comfortable. You know.
Thanks for sharing that. I'll let Joe join in now, and Robert, you can come in after and enjoy. But this is very good stuff. So Joe, come on in.
So I think I saw James O'Rourke here. Happy birthday.
Yes, happy birthday, James O'Rourke.
I jumped in here late.
Happy birthday.
I was just thinking about, you know, I jumped in here late, but you know, the commitments, and I thought about, you know, from the men's weekend, you know, commitments bring us closer to being the man we always wanted to be, and addictions pull us away from being the man we always wanted to be. And we're always either committed or addicted. I don't know, can we talk about this stuff or not?
Good, absolutely, go for it, man.
Yeah.
You know, the cosmic joke.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, we're on Facebook and there's going to be a recording of it. So you want to you know, use the content as it would be in a lesson to you instead of direct content.
Talk about your experience.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm listening to what is being said, and to me it's very not specific, and I don't know. I mean, I don't see that I have any issues with commitment. I probably do, but yeah, that was it. I don't have anything else to say. I'm complete. Happy birthday, Jim.
Go ahead, James.
I wanted to go back just for a second to the question the other man asked about, you know, when he lets himself down. And we see that a lot of times in men's circles over the years is men trying to get back their trust in themselves.
Mm.
And that's a dangerous, slippery slope for a man. You know, like, we are inherently out there from day one, competing, trying to figure things out, trying to win the babe, trying to make our mark, find our way, find our allies. Our commitments let us find our allies, you know. But as soon as a man starts to doubt his ability to trust himself to do what he wants, that's a recipe for, you know, you find some men and grab on, because you ain't getting out of that hole by yourself.
Robert, you want to respond or add on to that?
Yeah, no, well said, Jim. I think that's true. And you know, one of the things we've talked about on all of these calls that I've been on with you is about men finding other groups of men to support them. And, you know, support them sometimes doesn't look like support. It can be pretty hard-nosed and it can be pretty challenging, but doing whatever it takes to make sure that you meet the commitments that you set out. You know, these are not commitments thrust upon you. These are the ones that you choose to be and to have in your life in order to fulfill what you need. And as Jim said, I think, you know, having that support and having the consequences of not living up to your commitments brought home to you in a more visible, you know, present way by other men keeps you on track and helps you build that muscle. I say this to all the men that I work with and coach, and don't do it alone. You know, find your group of men, find your team. You know, some of the men on this call have been part of my team for over 28 years, you know, so it's a powerful tool.
Robert P., does that help you in regards to what's been shared?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what's resonating is that you're either letting yourself down or proving that you are or raising your self-worth, right? Over and over again. Whether you're looking at a light bulb in your home that you've refused to change in weeks, like every day you look at that light bulb, you're just letting yourself down. And we talk about commitments in relation a lot, in relationships. And it's like, if your relationship with yourself is sour, how could you expect to have great relationships with other people? It's just your outer world's just a reflection of your inner world. So it really resonated with me about sort of improving your self-worth and leveling up every time you follow through on a commitment.
Yeah, and being willing to help other people to their commitments too. I mean, that's a powerful act of caring. You know, we talked about that earlier on the call, and it's an uncomfortable one. But, you know, some of the work that, you know, we've done with our teams has made that a lot easier to just lay it on the line, man. You're fucking up. What's going on? This is bullshit. You know, there's no black, it's black and white. You know, there is no gray.
And not holding someone to a commitment is basically a definition of enabling.
Selling them out.
Yeah, selling them out, enabling. It's just allowing them to be less powerful than they are.
Right.
Allowing them to.
Every time you call somebody out on something, you know, it brings that back to yourself, right? You know, where am I doing that? How's that showing up in my life? You know, the three fingers pointing back at me. I mean, you can't really hold somebody accountable and not, I mean, you'd have to be a total hypocrite, right? To not in some way walk away and make sure, hey, I gotta make sure I'm showing up that way.
Right.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Robert, this is good stuff, Robert.
It is good stuff. We've got some great men on this call. I want to thank all you men for being here too.
Yeah, thanks for your commitment to show up tonight, man, to make it really good. Robert, what are you gleaning from the conversation so far?
Well, I think it's, you know, it's a great reinforcement of all the things that we're talking about here on the call, and that all the men have brought to the call. That the truth of that is, you know, not doing this work, not trying to do the work of commitment by yourself. I think that's really critical. It's critical for me. I think it's critical for everyone to be the men that they want to be, and to be as successful as they want to be. is to not do it by yourself, because then you start believing your own bullshit, you know. So we don't want that to happen. So I think that this call is really supporting that idea, and I'm as I said, I'm grateful to all of you men for being on this call, and bringing your wisdom to the call as well.
Howard, you want to add something?
I was just thinking, like, it'd be interesting to look at, instead of looking at commitment, you know, where has a lack of commitment cost you in your life, or what has lack of commitment? What is the cost of being uncommitted? And
Good question.
in any area, whether it's spirituality, whether it's physical health, whether it's relationship, you know, finances, but where has a lack of commitment cost you? Because to me, like I was saying before, that balance between pain and pleasure, you know, to me, the difference between achieving and not achieving is you make the pain of not achieving greater than the comfort of you know, letting go, or
I
not.
think I say the same thing, just differently, Howie. It's like, if you're in the ups and downs of life, you either become committed or you become the victim. So wherever you're the victim or the addict, or, you know, that's the cost of not being committed. You know,
I
if
agree.
you're not committed, look at where you're being the victim.
There's bigger costs, and I think not looking at the costs allows anyone, myself, anyone, all of us, you know, not seeing the cost allows, it's like being in denial of the pain for the short-term gain, you know.
Well, how does it show up for you?
So I can name 10 different ways, but the most common ones are, you know, let's say, whether it's not exercising, or not prepping my food, you know, not managing finances because I don't want to deal with it, or, you know, any one of these areas, and all these areas, in fact, you know, they appear to be less painful in the moment. They appear to be more comfortable in the moment, but ultimately, you know, they cost in self-esteem, they cost in achievement, they cost, and, you know, that's kind of like the struggle I have with myself, is saying, hey, can you give it just 100% for 100 days and see what happens? And, you know, when I have done that, I've had great gains. And when I haven't done that, I've had long periods of stagnation, you know?
That's good.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
That's good.
I think there's a danger, and like, one is, you know, we talk about, you know, who's the man you always wanted to be, you know, who's the man you know, you see yourself being in 10 years, you know, the commitment to that, to being that, is very powerful. I'm always very wary of the negative context of what it cost me, because there's a lot of hypothetical intellectual, you know, thoughts that I could have of the cost of, hey, if I had stayed on Wall Street and not started a family, and the cost of this and the cost of that. And, you know, as men, you know, we're risk takers, we're solution makers, you know, we should be living into the future of who we're going to be in 10 years, not who we aren't because we didn't do whatever 10 years ago. So I would say ever that.
I was, yeah, but James, I wasn't referring to like decisions on paths. I was referring to like black and white. Like, let's say for you, you know, when you're, you know, when you say, hey, I'm going to the gym this many times a week, I'm going on the treadmill, that, and you made that commitment to yourself. And then when you're following through, how you felt, how your energy felt, how your body felt, and then not following through on that, what that does to your body, your self-esteem, your energy level, your patience with your kids. So I was talking about very black and white commitments that, you know, you've broken to yourself on areas that it was obvious that that commitment was there to serve you.
Yeah.
I wasn't talking about like
more powerful for me. I experience it more powerful when I say, oh, I want that energy, that you know, that that long day of going to the gym early and having all that energy and being pumped up and ready to go. And that's more empowering for me than, what I lost out on today was, not burning off 500 calories, and I lost out on, the loss part. I just think it's dangerous for men to get caught up in the self-floggings.
Yeah, I wasn't again, I was not talking about beating yourself up. What I was saying is, I think not being clear on what it's costing enables the mechanism of not holding that commitment.
I think if you're not being clear, Howard, I think it's important to get support around that too. So I think it suggests to me, and I think I've been there too, you're too much in your head, and that's the time to like get some clarity, get some support.
I think that part of that is, it costs you your integrity as a man. Definitely, obviously, if you are making a commitment to go to the gym 5 days a week and you only go 2 days a week, or even if you go 5 days and then all of a sudden after 3 weeks you do 2 days, when you miss those 3 days, you're gonna feel like, wow, what am I doing? You have to readjust. I think behind of all of our commitments is it's not a commitment if you don't have your action behind it. I just picked up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu yesterday for the first time in like 10 years. And I did a double session and my legs were killing me. And I'm committed to 45 days worth of cardio every day. And today I got on the bike and I did 10 miles on the bike and my legs were hurting. But you know what? I was like, hey, this is what I'm committed to. If I don't put the action behind it, then I'm just not being in my word and my integrity, and I think that your commitment goes along with your discipline, which, obviously is your actions behind whatever it is that you're moving towards. So as much as I think it's great to look at what happens and what's the cost of what you're, if you're not living up to your commitment. But I mean, I think that the more we dwell in that mindset, the more that it's actually it's tearing us down in a way too. Look at what you can learn from it and adjust.
Thanks for sharing that out. Anyone else want to add? Okay, no problem. Robert, we're winding it down. So if you have any closing thoughts, this is the best time to put them in.
Well, I'll just say again that I'm grateful for all the men who showed up on the call and shared from their perspective and their experience. Many of the men on this call have the experience of having done a men's weekend, have men's teams, know what that support and the value of that is. So I just, if you're not on a team, then get on one. And don't get that support outside of yourself. I think it's important to develop the muscle and to be able to trust yourself and integrity and all of those things. But I'll tell you that nothing beats knowing that you're going to be inspected. So you want to maintain that level. You get a regular inspection. You get that support and that love, that tough love, from some other men in your life that you trust. And share your goals and your commitments with them, so that you get inspected and you get the support that you need. Thank you, men, for being here tonight.
There was a
go ahead.
There was a wise man that once told me that if you feel like you're happy to be going to your men's team meeting, then there's something wrong. Happy birthday.
James, you want to add something in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, this is great, especially for men who haven't done a men's weekend or haven't done any kind of initiation stuff into men's work. Like, all of us could be bringing men here in our lives that, would get benefit out of it, especially at a time now where with the pandemic and the quarantine and the upheaval you spoke about, Robert.
Yeah.
Like, this is a place that men can get some of the tools to better their lives. And hey, when those things are available again, great. Or if there's online teams available, I don't know, that's great. But let's not be stingy with this either,
That's a great point, Jim. I put it out to all you men to please, share this. Dr. Vibe is a great program here. It's really powerful, and you can get on here and put your own message out too. So, but I think you're right. Particularly at a time like this, we particularly need to bond together. As a team, the team of just men, trying to make something positive out of what's going on right now. And I think this call has been great.
Yeah. Well, I just echo the sentiments of everybody here tonight. I really appreciate everyone taking time out of their positive, productive schedules to make that commitment. And I encourage too, share this out, share the replay out. We do this at least once a month. So if you're not following Men and Masculinity, follow them and follow us, because it's more than worth it. I'm Dr. Vibe. I host these wonderful conversations called M&M Explorers at least once a month on this platform. And we'd love to have your feedback, comments, whether it's via the website, which is www.menandmasculinity.com, or you can go on the Facebook page. Please provide your feedback and also tell us what you'd like us to chat about, because we don't know everything. So the better of a community we develop, the better all our men are going to be. And if our men are good, this is just me, it's a better chance that everything else is going to be good.
Oh,
so that's what I believe. I wouldn't be sitting in this chair if I didn't believe that, because Lee Rosen would kick my backside from Florida, and I live in Toronto. So, and I think Robert would come from where he is on the Northwest and kick my backside.
Right, I'm a little bit closer too, so there you go. Watch out.
There you go. So in closing, I'd like to just thank everybody who watches this live on the replay. Also, again, big thanks to the Men and Masculinity team of Lee, Terry, Michelle, and Steve for making these conversations happen. And also a big thanks to Robert for taking time in his positive, productive schedule to commit to men. So have a great night, men. Looking forward to seeing you on the next conversation. And the last thing I will say is, especially during these times, give yourself grace.
Oh.